Illusions by Marta Minorovich. So yeah, this is a film which feels a little bit.
Just give a summary.
It's
first
in the
before-
water. This kind of film. So it's basically what you consider it's basically a Scandi noir detective drama, but centering or gravitating around a daughter who's missing and a mother's, I suppose, increasingly desperate attempts to, if not find her daughter, then to discover a kind of closure around
Find
her death. Yeah, around her
alive
death.
or dead or something.
I don't know where this is set in Poland, but it's coastal.
Mhm.
A sort of port city
In the north, presumably.
in the north, presumably, not the south.
They don't
not
have
the
a
sunny
coast
south.
anywhere else, do they?
Yeah, but I can't name drop this place. So it's a place of stark Panelaki, sort of Panelaki, like communal
That's something I
housing.
can get at Agnieszka.
Yeah. No, you can't. It's off menu. So panel-built social housing is the kind of dominant visual motif or urban motif of the film. There's also these beaches that are burdened by blankets of snow. There's the port. There is mist. There are lights that kind of, distantly sparkle on the distance. So there is a strong sense of pathetic fallacy.
Strong
with this film.
bokeh, as they say in Lens
bokeh.
reviews on YouTube.
Absolutely.
Bokeh.
Bokeh Juniors.
Bokeh Lupo.
Look at the Lupe. So there's a strong sense of like place and pathetic fallacy in this film, but we weren't blown away.
There's a
by
term we
this film.
sometimes use in this
Yeah.
podcast called middle of the more, which
Give me
stands
more.
for middle of the road.
Yeah.
More art house in full, and it means films which attempt to portend. I think I'm using that correctly.
I don't think you are.
Okay, I won't.
But
use
let's
it.
not get out of dictionary.
Let's not.
Go on.
It's very middle of the road. Which means average.
Yeah.
Mediocre even. It's a film which thinks it's dealing, because it has a serious and somber tone. It is dealing with a topic of great gravity with respect. It follows various kind of formal patterns of other art house films, but not with a coherent creative logic. So, there are shots that reminded me of Kiarostami, this amazing reflection of the forest.
Kiristama. Low fruit.
The reflection of Kiarostami bag. So Abbas Kiarostami style reflections in the car window thing, like from Certified Copy and 10 and whatever.
And cherry tree as well.
Yeah, exactly. Taste of cherry.
Yeah, taste of cherry.
And then
No, I've eaten, thank you.
at Agnieszka. Yeah, lots of quite sort of just cartoonish allusions to the playbook of art house film. The central performance, unfortunately, quite poor, quite weak, sort of, orbits between looking glum and then crying in a slightly unconvincing fashion.
Agata Buzek.
Shout out to her family. I'm afraid I think it's a debut. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, why not?
Yeah, why not?
My nose don't
Well,
say
that's the best. I mean, we're doing
Sure.
it. We're doing. If it wasn't a debut, we're doing her a favor by saying it was. And maybe I think she's capable of doing.
I think there
doing
were.
better.
The thing is that, like you said, this film was a bit superficial, and that's why I mentioned this sense of pathetic fallacy in space at the beginning, because the landscape is doing a lot of work, and it's not that the landscape is shot in an uninteresting way. She uses reflections and she uses width in quite often really compelling ways. Like you get, the actual choice to shoot in winter on a beach. A lot of the time, the snow on it is quite an interesting one. I think it's used potentially quite interestingly in a way, and we get a couple of moments where a sense of the sublime kind of creeps in a bit. So she's getting the lift in a hotel, and we see the reflection in the camera looking out, kind of wobbling slightly. distorting, and then
Mhm.
you suddenly realize the sea is there, kind of shrouded in fog, and it's very beautiful. I think
This was
these
a very
moments-
nice moment.
Yeah, these moments are very good in a kind of distancing sense and a widening sense, and they kind of open the palette of the film a bit. They open its mouth. But I think it didn't feel like there was a consistent like visual grammar at work throughout the film. The grade was consistent. It was very, very
Consistently
grey.
caricatured, and it's
Yeah.
over. It's desaturated.
Yeah, it was just
now.
really glum. It was a bit glum. And I think that the film, like I was thinking, the film allowed itself a couple of moments of escapism, like in this club doesn't really. She goes dancing in this club, and it's not really
Totally forgettable though.
completely
No
forgettable
catharsis.
It's no blue is the warmest color. It's no. I mean,
It's not even. It's no Xavier Dolan. I would
It's
even
no
go
Xavier
so far as to say that
fuck.
it
Okay.
doesn't even like have fun with its club. Its pretentious club scene. It didn't even like.
Which is what it was, really.
It was dull as dishwater. This film.
Fucking hell, that's strong.
It offends me because I love art house films.
Yeah.
I love films that are slower than normal films.
Yeah.
That prioritize beautiful imagery. That try and be about something more than the Marvel Extended Universe. And I'd like to be able to defend such films in situations where
Except when they're indefensible.
but unfortunately this was an indefensible example of exactly the kind of, and I said this about Emily Ateff's, I feel like I'm repeating myself, Emily Ateff's film Someday We'll Tell Each Other Things, or whatever it's called.
I mentioned this in the
Berlin.
screening.
You did, yes, you
Yeah.
whispered in my ear. It's precious criticisms,
Which you're now
sweet,
screening.
which I'm now
Screening
regurgitating.
things.
But I felt the same way, and I was trying to think, when was the last time I watched a film and started to question my own judgment because of how, so many things seem to be doing their job. Nice cinematography, kind of emotive score. Or like the same with the Ingmar Bergman film, but
tick, 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 tick,
tick,
It's
all
doing
these things element.
yeah.
But there's no heart and soul. There's nothing.
No blood.
No
It's
blood.
bloodless. Yeah, it's
And-
a bloodless film. Yeah.
And Kieslowski is an interesting. Both of us I think thought about the Decalogue season,
Mm.
which is there are lots of moments of great tragedy in these the Decalogue episodes by Kieslowski, and moments where objects and close
transfer power.
exactly, and you have these close-ups, these close-ups in Kieslowski, which are so powerfully connect us in a tactile way to objects of significance, pieces of paper being ripped out of things, scissors cutting pieces of paper, bits of fabric. This is like the
So
bread and butter of Kieslowski.
Kieslowski is object-oriented ontology.
Totally, yeah. But he's also Hitchcockian in a sense, because these
Yeah.
objects are always important in Kieslowski. We're being shown the objects not just because they're sentimental, but because they have importance. And this film was like entirely sentimental.
Yeah, because I think it had moments where we were saying that it obviously the wording used was shag. It was shagging Kieslowski quite a lot, and it was it had these close-ups. It had these kind of objects, or in this case, the objects were these buttons that this woman kind of collected at various points, which felt a bit fetch questy. The close-ups,
Fetch question.
yeah, like a kind of tropey fantasy program or something, where it's like the narrative gravitates around collecting, retrieving, or doing something with an object. And
As you were.
As you were, carry on. And I think the film used these kind of quite consciously used these kind of Kieslowskian methods, but again they felt, I don't know, it kind of jarred with the wider sense of the film. You became very aware that it was doing Kieslowski, and it was doing even the setting within these slightly run down but quite striking concrete communal building blocks, which you see a lot in the decalogues, but certainly Decalogue 1, 2, 3, blah blah blah. You really see them, and I think snowy wastelands and hinterlands and spaces in between. You see a lot of that in Kieslowski, but Kieslowski's like not only. It's very naturally with the Decalogue, it's really obvious what you're watching. Like with each hour-long piece, you're watching a particular cardinal sin, work its way out through a story, and there's a kind of frame of reference for you. So there's a moral, religious kind of underpinning and an existential underpinning, and you also get, I think, from those well, I'd say TV films, but those films, you get a sense of, I suppose, if you're going to batter people with tragedy, then you also need to give people levity.
Yeah.
And a sense of jouissance, like a sense of humor. And I think this film really was lacking a sense of humor. It was it's something we saw maybe with Angela Shanlak at Berlinale, of this kind of typology of like contemporary art house filmmaking, which is just like really miserablist and kind of autistic in a way, and kind of these and maybe it begins to say something about art house filmmaking throwing its hands up in the air about what to do with beauty, ways of conveying beauty in modernity. I think it's struggling. I think there's like a kind of creative crisis in a way.
I was hoping you'd have a read on why this is the case socially, because I don't really know.
I don't really know. I think it might generally be like, if you think about the new waves that have largely rocked or defined various points for various countries at various parts in the 20th century, they were very much emergent from a social base. If you think about the French New Wave, all of the energy and vivaciousness and weirdness of the period was embodied in Godin, Truffaut, and Romer. Like it was all there.
A community.
Yeah, a community, or just a particular kind of zeitgeist or way of thinking or attitude towards the world. And in a world where there is not like a dominant mode, but there is still a like institutional respect for beauty. So, for Shanlak, it's like it's pieces of Lieder and classical music and Bach and Mozart. And in this film, there are bits of like classical music used in various junctures in the film to kind of
so pat, and it's just a tribute to the Preisner in Kieslowski.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, I think it's a crisis of confidence. I think people want to tell beautiful, formally interesting stories, but kind of stumble a bit with finding a language for them because they think that they're not allowed to be funny. Like this film is like, this is about a mother who's lost her daughter, but I think it doesn't embrace the deep complexity of not grief or something, but like the complexity of a situation like that, and the world in which this story unfolds is just evacuated of like emotion. That's what it felt like, and it's like that doesn't feel. It doesn't help to set the main characters, the mother's grief, apart from the world around her.
Exactly,
because it feels like the world is her grief, and it's like, but that would make sense if the film was a POV, like a Zulawskian POV
or like
film.
Gaspar Noé or something.
Yeah. But here it's like, you don't really get a sense. Her emotion, which I think the director believes is really heightened, kind of fades into the background a bit.
Apart from occasional moments like when she sees a child in the playground and she, she gets these slight kind of visions into the fact that everyone else is. I mean, there's quite a nice bit where she meets a friend of. I mean, that's a nice way to do grief, where you meet a friend of the person who's died, who doesn't realize that their friend has died.
Yeah,
that bit was nice.
The Magda, the girl she meets
in the club, and then when she's handing out leaflets of the fate, that bit of dramatic irony was quite well executed.
Yeah.
There's a moment where she gets a bit stranger danger, but there's like some kids playing, and one of them drops their keys, and she sort of tells the kid. I mean, a lot of the time when I'm criticizing this film, I feel like I'm saying that it does things that I'm saying it's done a bad thing, and then a lot of my favorite films do that bad thing, break that rule. It breaks loads of the rules of conventional good filmmaking, but it doesn't have like a basis for doing so. There are lots of shots of people of her brushing her teeth or pulling her bra off or putting it back on, or just like waking up, and like I can't as a fan of Jean Dillman, I can't slag off a film on the basis that it just shows someone's everyday life. But like this film doesn't embrace or embody. It is just a film where fuck all happens. Basically.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's just not coherent. I think in a way. I mean, like in the sense of an inconsistent visual language, a flatness, or other synonyms we're going to use, like bloodless. It's just there was a film there. We watched a film for 90 minutes, but I didn't feel it really found a way to convey the intense, ferocious and confusing emotion that it was trying to marshal. And it was like it was leaning very heavily on the landscape. Would this film if we transplanted this film to, I don't know, the outskirts of Basingstoke, or if we relocated it to Sao Paulo or whatever, like would it be able to stand on its own legs in a way, in maybe a really, really ordinary landscape?
No, because it had no structure.
No, exactly. So it's like, again, there were flashes of interest there. Like, I think there was some kind of set pieces. There's a bit where there's some criminal who is admitted to killing someone else, and she thinks it might be
Everyone seems to love to admit to crimes in this film.
Yeah, there's a big thing about
so
guilt.
there's actually
guilt.
a very good performance from a female cop who looks exactly like Judith Butler.
Yeah. I thought she was good, actually.
Good,
the film, I mean,
but she made the main actress look so bad by being good.
And she had a sense of humor almost, or a kind of like what she had was forcefulness, which other people didn't. Like, everyone else in the film was a bit lost and whatever, but she had a kind of like directness and bluntness. And I suppose she was playing the kind of prestige, like noir Scandi crime drama. That would be the character, wouldn't it? This kind of slightly bossy, slightly humorful cop character would be like our lens on the world. But I don't know, there was like something. Yeah, it was something missing about it, and it's frustrating when you see a film that's technically doing lots of things right, but failing to really land any of its kind of formal punches, or it felt like a very long hour and a half.
Yeah,
I
frustrating.